Happy Sabbath. My sermon today is entitled Complaints from the Wilderness. That's exactly what the Israelites were doing. After the children of Israel had crossed the Red Sea, they started their long trek across the wilderness. After 3 long days, people began to get tired and thirsty. The water they had brought with them was almost gone, and they needed water for their flocks and herds. But then someone up ahead spotted an oasis from the harsh desert. A large pool of water was found, and everyone was excited to drink from it. But a great disappointment swept through the crowd. The water was bitter, undrinkable. The Israelites didn't know what to do, so they complained to Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Moses took the problem to God. The Lord told Moses exactly what to do. Exodus chapter 15, verse 25 reads, "Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet." This is the first time the Israelites complained to Moses of the hardships of their journey. But if we look closely at the verse, we notice the second part. Continuing the reading, "There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. He said, 'If you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the plagues I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your God who heals you.'" Here is God's warning. In this verse, God actually warns the children of Israel of what is to come. He tells them that there are going to be many instances where they need to listen to the voice of God and obey his commands. Although God warns the children of Israel, many of them forget, and when they need him most. Many weeks later, the Israelites arrive in the wilderness of Sin, about 100 miles down the peninsula of Sinai. This land was a barren, rocky country with little pasture for their cattle to feed. But by that time, the food supplies were getting lower and lower, and everyone was getting worried. The Israelites finally turned to Moses and Aaron, as they always did when in trouble. At this instance, the Israelites forgot all the miracles God had wrought out for them in Egypt, at the Red Sea, and at Marah. They cried out, saying, "Would to God we have died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, where we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat the bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness, to kill this whole assembly with hunger." The children of Israel forgot all the Lord had done for them. Moses told God what the people were saying, and asked him what to do. Exodus chapter 16, verse 4 and 5 reads, "Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain bread from heaven for you. The people are to go to gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to gather manna for 2 days." Through providing for the children of Israel's needs, God makes a test. When the children of Israel went out to gather manna on the 6th day, they needed to get 2 days' worth of manna, because on the 7th day, the Lord wanted to respect that day by not doing things like gathering manna and things they would do on every other day. Every Sabbath, the Lord would say, "This day, the 7th day, is my Sabbath." The Lord said this a total of 2,080 times as the children of Israel crossed the wilderness to remind them the 7th day is a special day. Continuing their journey across the wilderness, the Israelites arrived at Mount Sinai for Moses to receive the 10 laws of God. While Moses was up there for 40 nights and 40 days, the children of Israel were worried. After many weeks went by, they thought of Moses to be dead. So they went to Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, who has brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." So Aaron collected gold from the spoils they had brought with them from Egypt, and melted them down, and made an idol, a golden calf. They built an altar for the idol and danced around it, saying, "This is our God." When Moses got down from the mountain, he saw the children of Israel dancing and singing, and he grew angry. Moses called out to them, "Whoever is for the Lord, let him come to me." The first to come were the Levites, and they rallied to Moses. Then Moses threw the stone tablets, which God had inscribed with the finger of his hand, the 10 laws of which Israel is to follow. They fell down the mountainside, breaking into many pieces. Moses knew that there would still be many rebels in the camp, so he said to the Levites in Exodus chapter 32, verse 27. It reads, "Then he said to them, 'The Lord God of Israel says, each man strap a sword to his side, go back and forth through the camp from one end to the other, killing his brother, his friend, and his neighbor.' 3,000 people died that day because the Israelites sinned. God had told them to listen to all his commands and keep all his decrees, but the Israelites forgot, and that is why so many of them died. After all this trouble, the Israelites found themselves almost at the border of Canaan. Everybody was so excited to enter. So the Israelites sent 12 men, including Caleb and Joshua, to go and spy the land of Canaan. For many weeks they did not return, until one day a man saw 12 men loaded down with various kinds of fruit come into the camp. Many were excited. If this was the produce of Canaan, what a wonderful place it must be. But there was a problem. 10 of the 12 spies reported that men who dwell in Canaan were very powerful, as well as some children of Anak. The children of Anak were known to be giants, very tall men. Although Caleb and Joshua tried to convince everyone that the land of Canaan was a good place and that God will help them conquer it, the Israelites did not believe them. The Israelites were all disappointed, for they all knew that they would never enter the land God had promised to them. They would cry out, saying, "If only we had died in Egypt," and "Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to let us fall by the sword?" The Lord grew angry with the children of Israel and punished them. Numbers chapter 14, verses 21 and 23 reads, "Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the earth, not one of the men who saw my glory in the miraculous signs I performed in Egypt and in the desert, but who disobeyed me and trusted me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised an oath to their forefathers. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it." What a punishment. How disappointed the Israelites must have felt when they heard what God had said. Back into the wilderness they went. For 40 years they wandered until all the men and women who had doubted God had perished. After 40 years, the Israelites found themselves getting close to Canaan again. But there was another problem. The Israelites' water sources were getting low. Again, they complained to Moses. Again, God told Moses exactly what to do. But this time, God told Moses to speak to the rock and water will come forth. Moses summoned everyone to the rock, but Moses was fed up of hearing the Israelites grumble and complain. Blinded by anger, Moses stroked the rock, not once, but twice. On the second stroke, water gushed out. Overjoyed, the people ran to the water and drank their fill, while Moses and Aaron watched in disgust. But God was not through with Moses. Numbers chapter 20, verse 12 reads, "But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, 'Because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them.'" What a punishment for Moses. Because Moses did not obey God's exact commands, he prohibited himself from entering the land which God had promised him. Through all the stories of the children of Israel and Moses, a valuable lesson can be learned. Even though our minds are clouded with anger and grief, we must remember that God is always there to guide us through our trials and tribulations. My prayer today is that through any problem that crosses our path, we may trust God to help us, listen to his every instruction, and obey his exact commands. For he has said that he will reward those who are faithful and obedient to the Lord our God. May this message remain in our hearts and minds today.